what was the most challenging part of your journey?
Spending time with each other. No, I think in all seriousness, for me, there were many challenges. I mean, it was beyond anything we'd ever experienced. But the big takeaway for me at the final end, we had complete implosions early on, but the consistent biggest challenge throughout was finding water, which really is something we take for granted and you don't think about it. And when you're in the desert, you have to find your gallon of water that you consume each day. That became a mental stress on us that I think was it's hard to put words to.
Yeah, I disagree with and argue with Pete on most things, but I would agree with him in this instance. I mean, the trip was replete with just all kinds of horrible challenges involving the terrain, the heat, the snowstorms and the ice during the winter parts of the journey, the cliff faces that we had to kind of navigate our way across. But ultimately, the most persistent challenge of all, and the one that scared us the most, was the search for water. One adage that we had to kind of adhere to and keep in mind at all times was that you're never moving towards water, you're always moving away from water, which is a way of basically saying that you must never move so far beyond the last known source of water that you cannot get back to it. Over tourism and oversaturation on social media and other forms of media are a manifestation of a problem that we've had since the very beginning with our national parks, which is that they're being loved to death. These are places that we recognize as places that are repositories of some of the most extraordinary national beauty that we have in this country. It's part of the Commonwealth that we all share by virtue of the fact that we're citizens of this republic. And those places were set aside to be protected, but also to be visited and accessed by people, ordinary Americans, so that we can be touched by and in some cases transformed by them. But that's a complex relationship, and it's impossible for all of us to move into those spaces without having an impact on them. And that's one of the great challenges that goes with what's at the core of our relationship to our national parks as citizens. It's at the center of the covenant that exists between Americans and America's national parks. It has to do with the idea of stewardship. It's the idea that these places were set aside and passed along to us with the obligation that we protect them so that they can be handed off intact to people, our children and our children's children who follow behind us.
I would just add that I think we need to remind the general public that these places are more like more sacred, more like you would experience going to a place of worship, something that all religions in the world revere as silence, but we often go into these national parks and want to bring our noises with them. So trying to remind people that they are a place of reverence and not just pure backdrop entertainment.
I think that's super important, what Pete is saying. I mean, it's not a bad idea to frame these places in terms of how we think about cathedrals or mosques or temples, because that's what they are. It's a good yardstick by which to gauge how we move through them and how we conduct ourselves inside of them. They're places of worship. They're more like that, and they're less like Disney World as amusement parks.
I hope people will walk away. They'll have an entertaining evening with some back and forth banter of two longtime friends that bicker like a bad married couple on stage a little bit. But they will walk away with a better understanding of not just one national park, but the fragility of that national park, which is symbolic of so much of our shared public lands and national parks, and also some of the more nuanced insights about the power of native voices and how they still have a very significant presence, specifically around Grand Canyon National Park, and how it's important to bring them back to the table, and other small things they'll learn about silence and the beauty of night sky.
The end of this journey through the Grand Canyon, the physical traverse of the canyon, that marked the completion of one journey, but the beginning of another. And we're in the middle of the second journey. It's a journey of ideas that we lay forth and express in the stories that we're now sharing with others. That's the second part of our journey, and it's taken us all over the country. It's taken us to cities and states I've never been to. It's enabled us to meet and connect with and speak to and listen to and learn from people that we never would have met otherwise. And so I think one thing that we both learned is that, we completed the physical journey by just placing one foot in front of the other. But at the end of that process, the thing that we completed, the journey itself, it pulled us into in new directions and opened up new horizons. And that's something that journeys do. That's why we should all embark on great, challenging, personal journeys that take us beyond our limits. And so that's what we're in the middle of right now. And this, I would say, is just as challenging and just as fulfilling, if not more so, than the actual physical journey itself.
I think we'd also love to get back to the Grand Canyon for a small walkabout, a much smaller one, a literal small walk in the park.
Maybe use one of those coin-operated viewfinders.
That is awesome.
Just lunch by that. I like that idea.
Yeah, you get right out of the car, just pop in a quarter.
Yeah.
If we'd only done that the first time, we could have saved ourselves so much trouble.